What's up, everybody? What's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to the first official episode of the Left-Handed Leftist podcast. As always, my name is Carlos. I am the host here. And you guys, the first episode, we have a really phenomenal podcast set up for you guys. We are going to be talking about Palestine and specifically the United States complicity in the genocide of Palestinians. We're going to be talking about the US's full throttle support for giving aid and U.S. tax money to the Israeli state. We're going to be talking about elected officials kind of lying about a two-state solution and more. We're also going to be talking about Maryland state and how state and localities are actually investing within Israel as well. So you all, for this wonderful conversation, I am so pleased to be joined by Hiruy Hadgu. Hiruy is the founder of Howard County for Free Palestine, also is one of the chairs of a local ballot initiative committee on ethical screening for Howard County as well. And he's been a local activist within Howard County in Maryland for going on over 8 years. So without further ado, you guys, let's get it started. Awesome, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in. Hiruy, thank you so much for being the first person I'm actually talking to on the podcast here. I'm excited to have you. Yeah, and really talk about Palestine. I mean, what we are, almost 2 years total into America's basically complicity within this genocide. So kind of starting out here, I wanted to see if you can kind of like recap for a lot of people who may have been out of it. I don't know how they missed it, but not following what's going on with the US's complicity or just the Palestinian genocide in total. Can you kind of refresh people's memories of like what happened and how we got to this point?
Yeah, thanks, Carlos. It's funny that you mentioned, the 2 years. I think you and I met at the Maryland Democratic Party's annual convention or whatever when they were electing Ken Ullman for the party chair, and we were there to attempt to force a discussion on the genocide and to attempt the Democratic Party to speak on this issue, the Maryland Democratic Party to speak on this issue. I think Governor Westmore was there as well. His chosen candidate, and good to be on this show with you. Thanks for inviting me, and it's an honor to be the first person that you're interviewing. I think I put myself in the category of people whose eyes opened up, in a significant way to the reality of what's happening over there in this the Middle East. I had always thought that this was a very complicated issue, and that it was not the best people with the most well-meaning people have tried to solve it, and it's just intractable, and it's just something that we're just going to have to live with. And I think after this October 7, it became, I think, a couple of things that became clear to me was this is easily solvable if the United States stops helping apartheid Israel in any way. So if the U.S. had stopped giving weapons or aid period to Israel, it would have stopped. And even going back before October 7, if the U.S. had stopped supporting apartheid Israel, it would have this problem would have been solved. And the other thing that became clear and really shocked me and continues to shock me is the fact that our neighbors, our friends, and just community people in general they were talking about, we would see these videos coming out of these children and civilians getting killed, and they were rationalizing this mass murder by, saying, oh, quote unquote, Hamas is using people as human shields, and just repeating the claims. And I remember interacting with someone who, like at the beginning, who reposted a video and a picture of what, the uh, the Israeli government put out, that like in a hospital, that showed, quote unquote, a tunnel, and like they were repeating these lies, and it was just so, it was weird, and it's still really weird for me to comprehend the fact that, like regardless of whether or not people who are involved in the resistance movement in Gaza, regardless of whether or not they are in these hospitals or whatever, you don't bomb the entire hospital just to get them. And it just, the fact that people in the US were rationalizing that, and not only that, like they were not speaking out against it, regardless of whether or not these children are getting killed, as human shields or whatever. Just that silence was really shocking to me, and so, it's from for 2 years, we witnessed, nonstop human suffering, and we're to this day, we're seeing nonstop human suffering.
The biggest thing to me has been seeing from 2 years ago on October 7th, a lot of people's minds. That was when all this started. I mean, not just, you didn't just have politicians who were saying, well, the only reason that this, what they were calling a war at that point, is because Hamas bombed Israel and took hostages. But actually, a lot of people, and actually historians have been pointing out, it didn't start then. This started back in the 1940s when the Nakba happened, and you had Europeans actually coming into what was Palestine then and moving people out to say this will now be Israelis' home. And that's when kind of the Zionist project started. And a lot of people that I talk to now, or the ones who are not activated around this, a lot of their kind of talking points are, well, this is foreign policy, this is like Israel's genocide or war, it has nothing to do with us. Can you kind of tell people how the US is complicit and also implicated in this genocide happening?
Yeah, so I'm going to mention this part because I think, people may not know this. Before October 7, before Biden was president, before Trump was president, Obama gave Israel one of its largest aid packages in history, which was like a $36 billion aid package for like over 10 years. Uh,
What?
so yeah. And apparently it was in exchange for, because he negotiated the Iran nuclear agreement and the Israelis were unhappy. It was sort of like a consolation prize, and he gave them $36 billion, which, people, including me, rationalized at that time, yeah, so that's one way that it affects us, is that we are funding, this genocide to the tune of billions and billions of dollars, but we've also funded the Zionist project since, we've provided military, diplomatic, and, political cover for, since it started. And, of course, after, as you may know, Trump moved the embassy to, I believe, from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Was my understanding is that it was an existing U.S. law that was not implemented, and it passed under Bill Clinton, that that they didn't implement, but decided to, they were using it as a way to, I think, to keep Israel in line. But Trump kept his promise to to the Israelis, and so yeah, he moved them, he moved the embassy, and then Biden, from October 7 until he left office, gave Israel, I believe, anywhere from I think like $21 billion, within like the time, yeah, from October 2023 until January 2025. It was, yeah, 21, or yeah, $21 billion. Um, and he did that while, uh, knowing full well that the Israeli government was breaking the law, violating humanitarian law, committing genocide. And so by giving military aid to apartheid Israel, Joe Biden was breaking the law because there's the law called the Leahy Law and the Foreign Assistance Act that prevents the U.S. from providing any aid to a country that's committing war crimes. And I was just reminded, like yesterday or today, that Blinken basically changed the conclusion of a report that said that Israel was committing war crimes to justify continuing giving these, you know, and so, and then, yeah, to this day, we've been giving them, billions. And so there's that part. And then I think, the other part where, why I think it's so, these are taxpayer dollars that should be going for schools, for infrastructure that we're giving to kill people. But I think, another thing that's been a realization that made salient a point for me was the fact that all these elected officials from local to federal level who are supposed to be, the people, who proclaim that they care about human rights and for, black people or brown people, whatever, when it mattered, they didn't speak out. And, even though they were seeing this live stream genocide, they didn't speak out. And it made me realize how they really don't care about, um, I mean, maybe I'm sure, some people hearing this would be like, yeah, what did you think? But to me, it was really seeing that, the fact that black children continue to drink from lead poison pipe, is not like from lack of resources or from attempting to try. I mean, people are not trying their best. People are,
You're right.
and it's not like so the elected officials is one thing, but the society in general, the people with economic and political power are not trying their best. Like as long as they're getting theirs and they're okay with these marginal improvements to the children who need it the most, and they would not be okay with their own children drinking from lead poisoned pipes, but they will gladly defend rotten politicians in Baltimore City, who are maintaining a status quo that benefits them. And the same thing in Howard County, you have children who are attending schools that are with high poverty rate, and they're not doing, their scores are really in bad shape compared to their peers, white and Asian peers, in the really, really bad. Like they are failing, and they're failing so these politicians are failing these children, but also the people who are responsible for helping them get elected are failing these children. And, anyone who says they care about these children, if they're not, jumping, up and down on a table demanding change, they're lying.
No, you're right. And even I'm actually so glad that you mentioned the actual money part of it that we're contributing, because we hear politicians all the time say like, okay, we cannot give everyone universal health care because how do we pay for it? We don't have the money. We can't even, to your point, we can't even get the eliminate leaded drinking water, or we can't make sure that public colleges are free, or even fully funding the public education system. But at
Mm-hmm.
the same time, whenever there is money for a war, whenever there's money for a genocide, the money just magically comes. So it
Mm-hmm.
even shows people that it isn't a lack of resources that we have, it's a lack of elected officials. And I'm also glad that you called out the public too, because it's a lack of the public wanting to dedicate money and actually dedicate the actual energy to activating politicians and demanding that they actually fund Americans before we fund a genocide on behalf of a country that has made it clear Israel's main desire is ethnic cleansing that doesn't stop with Palestinians. It continues to move on until they take over the whole Middle East Middle
Mm-hmm.
East region.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, yeah, it's disgusting how we are just allocating resources. And I actually wanted to get your thoughts on when it comes to the actual public, or actually before that, when it comes to actual politicians deciding what they spend their resources on. Do you see it as that politicians are just for some reason heavily invested in the state of Israel, or do you think that it is kind of the lobbyists and an actual big money interest that keeps them in lockstep with not just the country but also the genocide?
I think it's a little bit of both, and the reason I would say that is, like I've focused a lot on local issues and developer influence, and on government, and I think it's the same with like lobbying at the federal level too, in terms of if all they know is, if you have this power structure and they're talking to each other, and all they're hearing are the same, like the narratives that are created in this power structure, then yeah, like I think, like I've talked to like black politicians who sound pretty Zionist, and it's because they have been interacting with, like they may have Zionist friends, they may have been attending these meetings about Israel that's been organized by these innocuous sounding Zionist organizations, and then in the teaching them about like culture or whatever it may be, and they may have friends. So like I think there's that, but I think also, yeah, there's the money issue where they're relying on them for campaigns, and I just ultimately, until, like, I just don't understand it. Like I don't understand how people, how they can be quiet seeing what they're seeing, like regardless of, like at some point it has, like, okay, 1 month, 2 month, 3 months, okay, like you kept quiet, you say all kinds of things about other issues where, saying it was just important to say, and all of a sudden you have this wisdom that, this is not worth saying anything about. Like, you can't, like, it's just, they're lying to themselves, they're lying to us. And but the fact that people can, just sit with themselves and live with themselves without saying anything about what's going on, these elected officials, it's just appalling. So I question, especially the one, again, like, the people who, the Republicans who are elected, like I don't have any expectations, because they've said who they are, like they're not
Yeah.
pretending. But the ones who are supposed to be, like, you know caring for people, the fact that they're not saying anything, it just, like, they're just robots. Like, I don't like, and they're not robots, so like it's very incomprehensible to just witness them stumble and completely act confused. Even talking about like what motivates them to do this on Israel, like, just doesn't make sense. Like right now, like it just does, like, maybe before October 7, like maybe it does. But like now, like, to ask what motivates you to keep supporting this doesn't even make sense. It's just so bizarre.
No, you're right. I mean, look, speaking as somebody who has seen or speaking as somebody who has their criticism when it comes to black elected officials, especially because how I look at it is a lot of black elected officials use their like blackness to show off that they are some progressive or leftist person. And even looking at the Congressional Black Caucus, who used to be the most radical leftist caucus, but is now in lockstep with genocide and lockstep with corporations in the capitalist class.
Mhm.
It's not just even discouraging, it's more so just like disappointing that even as someone who has low expectations for like elected officials, it is, if you're not going to speak out about genocide, what are you actually going to speak out about? Because I remember and thoughts here with this too, is that when the pressure started about around October 7th, people at that point weren't even saying we want you to call it a genocide. People here were just saying we want you to just to say ceasefire, like the
Mhm.
bare minimum of the bare minimum, and they couldn't even do that.
Yeah, they couldn't do that. They wouldn't mention like the word Palestine. Like I remember, we were doing like this rally in Annapolis, and like there was this group of like people visiting Annapolis, and I think, it was like from a group called like 100 Black Men or something like that. It's like this organization that mentors, young Black boys. And, we had like people with us who were, like protesting, like they had their signs. And, these young men, like these young boys, they wanted to take, pictures with, they were trying to take pictures with, with the people that were with us. And, I remember seeing like, these, the mentors, scolding them and telling these young boys, like they said, you better delete those pictures. People will tell you like, okay, like I'm, like I'm afraid of losing my job or whatever. Like there are different concerns about losing jobs. There are different concerns about, but like at some point, like, like when you're sleeping at home, like safe and sound with your children in the other room, if you can't say anything, like if you can't what is the point? Like what are you trying to do? Like you have to, like, so yeah, I mean, and I think we were talking about, like Black politicians. It's, to me, it's kind of, related, because I mean, as a Black politician, like you should know, like Jim Crow,
Right.
is not, like is not even 100 years old. Like, like it's still fresh. We still, like, so when you hear about Jim Crow, like you should be triggered, and you should be like, I am against anyone who implements Jim Crow. And like they're not moved, like, like you said, they're part of, yeah, they're just part of this leadership, this class that's
Mhm.
okay with, I guess that's okay with human suffering. And it's not even ideology or like whatever. Like, when you see people that are getting, like killed, like the fact that you can't even say ceasefire, it's just very like, I don't know, like, they wouldn't, we're still going through it, and compartmentalizing, and trying to just deal with little bits and bits of what we're experiencing, but
You're
it's
right.
just very difficult to comprehend.
Nah, definitely. And then even to your earlier point that you made about how you kind of don't look at Republicans as kind of even going to be on the right side of the issue. What has been astonishing to me is that it seems like the Republicans honestly are more open to actually calling it what it is. And even I was having a conversation with somebody a few weeks ago about how Marjorie Taylor Greene said the word genocide before Bernie Sanders said it. And
Hmm.
just seeing how even here in Maryland, Chris Van Hollen has been one of the most like outspoken U.S. senators on the genocide. He doesn't even call it a genocide yet. He's kind of referring to it as like, the humanitarian crisis. Democrats have now I think that they have noticed that this is one of the main things that their base voters care about. So they're all trying to figure out, well, how do we show them that we care enough to kind of placate them, but not actually do anything? And what we see now is a bunch of politicians saying like, well, we believe in a Palestinian state and the Palestinians' right to self-determination, but you don't see anyone really doing something about it, which I actually want to bring in the first clip that we have here and get your thoughts on it when it comes to hearing Pete Buttigieg, who is oddly enough, and I think this is one of the most weirdest things, is considered to be a presidential candidate in 2028. But him talk about being asked about his thoughts on the genocide.
About human suffering in Gaza.
Do you think it's time to recognize a Palestinian state?
I think that's a profound question that arouses a lot of the biggest problems that have happened with Israel's survival, Israel's right to survival in the diplomatic scene. And many of the people who have taken that step historically have done so for different reasons than what we see happening with European countries. I think we need to step back, and we need to do whatever it takes to ensure that there is a real two-state solution, and that no one, not even the likes of Netanyahu, can veto the international community's commitment to a two-state solution where you have Palestinians and Israelis living with safety, with security, with rights. I believe that can happen, but we have to actually show some commitment to it.
I'll cut it there because I care not to hear about his personal people to judge more than that. I'm sorry, even putting for you and the audience through listening to people to judge. What are your thoughts on hearing him say that?
Well, I mean, even when he's talking about whether or not to make that decision, he's talking about it from the point of view of like how apartheid Israel should feel, versus, whether or not it's the, it's the right thing, it's the right thing to do. Anyone who, who learns more on this issue will know that this idea of a two-state solution was always a charade, and there was no such thing. There was not going to be any, it was just a position that was put in place to allow, apartheid Israel to slowly absorb, the remaining, you know, Palestinian, land until there were no more Palestinians in that area. And I think, October 7 accelerated that, and, they found the perfect time where, the sense of rule of law, I guess, did not exist, or there was no accountability. And yeah, so they just went, to implement what they had in plan in the first place. I mean, and the fact that these two guys, who, I think John Favreau, he worked for Obama. Like he knows all these issues, like the background on these issues, and he's talking about it like he's someone who doesn't know these issues. And and then Pete Buttigieg, the same thing, like he's steeped into these issues. It's a charade. Like, they're just playing, these games with us. And so ultimately, like, people have repeatedly said this week and last week, like, yeah, you can recognize the Palestinian state, but you're not addressing the genocide. You're not addressing the human suffering that's going on. And so it's a misdirection. And they're still, yeah, I mean, they're lying to us, they're lying to themselves, and they're showing how hollow and heartless they are. And again, like, they prove to us that that human life to them is not sacred. These, like, they're sitting there and they're talking about like this Palestinian state while children are getting slaughtered. Just human life is not sacred to them. Um and the people, moreover, the people who listen to them, I'm sure human life is sacred to them, but like only certain kind of human life is sacred to them. And so that's who they're talking to. And I mean, it's just, we're like in completely different, I think, worlds, like with them, and us, I think.
No, you're right. And one thing that always sticks out to me in that video is when, like, the front facing question was, do you think we should recognize Palestine as a state? And to not have a definitive answer of yes, but at the same time saying we should have a two-state solution, which would be a Palestinian state. So how do you have one without the other? But I do want to kind of highlight what you said there too, is that because you see a lot of politicians now, or not even now, when I would even say a few months after October 7th happened, because we know once October 7th happened, there was this thing of like, no, we are going full on Zionist and full on Islamophobic. But a few months after that, you had people saying that, oh, well, we need to give the Palestinians the right to self-determination with a two-state solution. And I'm glad that you pointed out a two-state solution isn't something that's actually able to happen. Israel has already said, we do not want a two-state solution. There will only be the state of Israel. But then on top of that, when you have Israel destroying all the infrastructure within Gaza, when you have them annexing the West Bank, destroying the hospitals, the roads, and all the infrastructure, how would there be two states at the same time when one of those two states doesn't even control who comes in and leaves the country at its own will?
Yeah, I'm glad you pointed out like how the question of a Palestinian state versus like the two-state solution, like changing the term, that it's subtle, but yeah, it's like just repeating something that people have always heard, like two-state, yeah, okay, but it's a very, yeah, it's sneaky. And I agree that I think there's, I mean, yeah, there's nothing like, their homes are destroyed, the historical artifacts are destroyed, their mosques are destroyed. And the other thing is, I mean, how do you live next to that kind of a society? Like, how do you live in that society?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like a hornet, like it's a hornet nest. I mean, like, how do these people have dehumanized and, treated them like a second, third class citizen since the beginning. And so this idea that, there would be any peace with, I mean, they're showing that it's not possible. So I think it's again, it's a charade. Like they're lying to us that I think even when like even this idea of like a single secular state, I mean, again, like how do you do that when, when like how do you live with your killers? And then the other thing is, the way that the two-state solution, or like the Palestinian state, is recognized is still under the terms of, like the Western, like society. Oh, as long as you don't have any, like military or whatever, like
Be a
it's
fake
the same
state
thing.
in a
Yeah, fake
sort
state.
of
It's the
way.
same it's the same thing that they did to, African, nations. I mean, they're repeating the same things that they've done, like over and over and over again. Uh, I mean, we have to see that. Just it's not good enough.
Definitely. No, you're right. No, you're right. And then before we move into, because there's two other points I'd love to get your thoughts on, but before moving into those, can you kind of touch on for people too of that? How this genocide going on right now, some people look at it will say the US is just one country out of the hundreds of countries that are giving money towards Israel, and that like our country can only do but so much. Can you kind of speak on to how really the only reason this genocide has gotten as far as it has gotten and is continuously going is because of our country's unfettered support to Zionist country?
Yeah, I mean, like I don't know the amount of money that other countries have given off the top of my head, but I think, it's nothing compared to what we've given. And, even, I mean, it's all of that is evidenced by the fact that the only country that vetoes ceasefire in the Security Council at this point is the US. And it's been the US for, since Biden, since, like early, I think 2024. So, I mean, if the US stops funding and providing any sort of cover to apartheid Israel, then I think it would stop. And, and I mean, the way things are going, I'm not, like I'm not a military, like I'm not an expert in any of like, but you can see that every day, it's attacking other countries. I mean, there's no end in sight to peace there, because, it continues to get support from the US. And I think it's leading to something that is perhaps very, irreversible in terms of like long term. Maybe it could lead to more like, wars with, like more with other countries, like long protracted wars.
Yeah. We
And
could have a
so,
world
yeah.
war because of
Yeah.
like a whole
Yeah.
world war because of how much. And the crazy thing is, it wouldn't be like other world wars where you have like this many countries against this many countries. It literally would be almost the US and Israel against the rest of the world, because like you
Yeah.
said, we are not just like we are the major funders, but also you look at previous presidents, other presidents have called up Netanyahu or like whoever the prime minister is and said, look, you need to cut it out. And
Yeah.
Israel follows suit, because without
Yeah.
us, they wouldn't have a state, to be honest. But the
Yeah.
craziest thing to me is when it comes to our tax dollars is that we do not have universal health care in this country, but we give money to Israel, which does have universal health care, so that they can
Yep.
take care of their people. While it almost, because I used to say the US is almost like treats Israel as if they're a state. But I now switch it where the U.S. acts like we are a state of Israel, the country, because of how much we are just dedicated to this
Unconditional. Yeah.
unconditionally dedicated
Yeah.
to a country that if we want to get aid into Palestine, they can tell us no, but
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
still want the same money and resources from us.
Yeah. I mean, going to the point of, healthcare and infrastructure, and to the lead pipes, I think, if you remember like the Flint, lead pipe, crisis that took place when Obama was president, I think if I'm not mistaken, they just finished replacing all the lead pipes last year, I think. I mean, it took 10 years, 10 years to replace these lead pipes. Meanwhile, we've been spending all this money on on killing people. And so if they wanted to, they could do all these things, replace lead pipes, replace the schools, whatever, within a year if they wanted to, because they're showing that they can. And yeah, I think, and again, like, I think the reason they don't do it is, yeah, of course Israel has a lot of influence, but the public, the voter, like the people with economic and political power, I think, at least in the on the like in the within the Democratic Party, white liberals, middle class black voters, and middle class immigrants, I think as long as things are going, the status quo is working for them, and as long as that's maintained, they're okay with these marginal changes for the people who truly need it. I if it was their children drinking from lead poison pipes, they would destroy anything in their way to make these changes. They're not looking at these kids as their own kids. I think the root cause of that, I think, if they felt like, yeah, like these are our kids too, they would demand those like fundamental changes. So yeah, I think that's why I wish you would, I think if that changed, I think things would change.
You're right. My general thought is that because we live in this capitalist structure, it makes everyone so individualistic, of like, it's all about me and my personal family. And if it doesn't matter to us, or if it doesn't directly affect us, who cares? But even we see the long-term effects when you look at policing is heavily affected by the state of Israel, who trains our police to the way they treat Palestinians, or the way that our police treat us. We are heavily influenced or we are contributing at this point to our own destruction as a country. But even switching topics from that, I do want to get your thoughts when it comes to, because how you mentioned how the Democratic Party seems to be more kind of caught in a foothold when it comes to the moneyed interests around the genocide, to where, honestly, and it kills me, the only person I could say is speaking up within the Democratic Party on like a national platform about this would be Chris Van Hollen, even though he doesn't say genocide. Bernie Sanders, being independent, just said genocide. Marjorie Taylor Greene has been saying genocide for a couple of weeks now, which is still,
it's crazy.
Yeah, like, it's just weird seeing like a MAGA Republican has more just anti-war or just more morals, it seems, than an actual like independent or a Democrat does. It really shows where people's bedfellows lie. But what are your thoughts when it comes to the power of AIPAC or DMFI, the Democratic majority for Israel, and how they've kind of taken over our politicians?
I mean, it's just hard to like comprehend. And I also, yeah, I mean, how they have had a stranglehold, the way that they replaced Cory Bush. They targeted Cory Bush, and they targeted Jamal Bowen is just insane, the amount of money that they spent. But they also have allies in Congress, Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer, the perfect leadership that they have, who they don't seem like these people don't seem like they are supportive of Israel begrudgingly. I think they're happy to support them.
What did Hakeem Jeffries call Israel? The fifth or sixth borough of New York?
Wow. Yeah. So like I mean, that's who, so they have strong allies. And even in Maryland, people who, I mean, Elijah Cummings used to have a program in school in partnership with Zionist organizations.
Wait, what?
That, yes, there is a program in school, like in Baltimore, I think in Baltimore City, that I think like that Mfume is has taken on, that they provide some sort of like recognition or support or whatever to Black children. So yeah, I mean, these I forget the program, but it's, if you,
I just found it.
yeah,
It's the Elijah Cummings Youth Program in Israel. a
Yep.
2-year fellowship for Baltimore high school students designed to build leadership skills and foster relationships between the city's Black and Jewish communities. What are we doing? It's
Yeah.
founded by the late Elijah Cummings and the Baltimore Jewish Council. What are we doing? We're
Yeah.
legit getting Black people who have, if you look at the civil rights movement, had a history of supporting the state of Palestine to basically be
Yeah.
like, no, we're gonna make Zionists early. We're gonna really capture the Black people to be Zion. This is
So,
wow.
you know, this is Elijah Cummings, you know, and, you know, this is, you know, it's to that level, you know, it's not even to like, you know, like the lobbying level, it's the community level. Like there's a lot of, you know, organizations, civic organizations that are working with the, you know, with the politicians, you know, Representative Sarah Elfreth has, you know, we attended like her so-called Interfaith Advisory Council, and, you know, they're, you know, sitting there are, you know, Zionists, you know, representing, you know, the you know, community. And yeah, I mean, it's so, and they've had long relationships, and it's not just that, like, you know, liberal Zionists have, you know, are part of this, you know, like they're you know, engaged in, you know, civic organizations. You know, I've interacted with, you know, liberal Zionists who are leading, and, you know, like efforts to help undocumented immigrants. And, you know, where I reached out to them and to ask, you know, hey, you know, do you guys want to collaborate on, you know, in you know, organizing like a rally or whatever? And they say like, I don't want to get involved in anything that's critical of Israel, you know. So yeah, so, you know, but that's how it is. Like it's deep seated from the, you know, from the bottom, you know, from the bottom up. I mean, you know, IPAC is, yeah, I think it's uh a you know, a problem. And at the same time, you know, like the influence campaign starts from, you know, from the bottom in the communities, like you saw, like the Elijah, what is it called, Elijah Cummings, you know.
The Elijah Cummings youth program in Israel.
Yeah, it's
It's an
insane.
Israel part. It's crazy too.
Yeah, it's blatant. And, you know, Mfume still, you know, helps push this. And, you know, so like, yeah, like you said, what are we doing here? Like you guys are supposed, you know, like you like people like Mfume grew up, you know, during the apartheid system and in the US. And like here you are working with an apartheid state and advancing its agenda. It's insane.
That is,
you know, like
wow,
I'm not surprised about the white politicians.
Yeah.
You know, like Sarah Alfred or whatever. But like the Black politicians, like, come on.
It's sad.
You know,
it really is
yeah,
sad.
it's sad.
Like,
yeah,
it's like, so you all, and especially the ones who do all this talking about civil rights, all this talking about Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and all this, is like, and Nelson Mandela, it's like, hold up. So you all are literally leaving out one of the most crucial parts of their movement, which was that the solidarity isn't just Black Americans to themselves. We see ourselves as a global race, and issues that don't just affect us, that affect our brothers and sisters in other disadvantaged communities as well. It's disgusting. It is literally, yeah, this is disgusting.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
thank you for like letting me know about that program. That is, I know I'm not going to be able to get over that. And also, what I'm going to do also is add in a clip here as well that talks, because I remember Sarah Elfreth was one of the like AIPAC supported candidates and did like a thank you video for them as well. So I'll also add in the clip here.
Happy Independence Day, Israel. Today and every day, I join Israelis, Americans, the Jewish community, and countless others across the world in celebrating Israel's 77 years of independence. Now, for 77 years, the Israeli people have faced persistent challenges and threats, and yet have prevailed and will continue to prevail and flourish because of the strong U.S.-Israel relationship. And as we mark this joyous occasion, we cannot lose sight of the hostages that are still being held, including 5 Americans, and we must continue to demand their safe return to their families.
Here, but one thing I did want to get your thoughts on, because you were actually one of the people who kind of opened up my eyes to this, is that the support for Israel isn't just a national level thing. It also goes to state and local. And I was wondering, I'm gonna show a clip here too about how the support goes even to Governor Moore, who supports the state of Israel too. But I want to get your thoughts on this clip.
I'm here to say very clearly We are here to stand with the state of Israel, to recognize the right of Israel to exist, to recognize the right for Israel to defend itself, to recognize the right of Israelis to live without fear. But today, it's not just time for us to stand with Israel. It's also time for us to stand unequivocally against Hamas. I've led soldiers in combat. I've seen not just the direct, but the indirect impacts of terrorism. Terrorists target civilians. And that's what Hamas did. So if you stand with Israel, you stand against Hamas. And if you stand with the Palestinian people and their right to self-determination, you also stand against Hamas.
Again, sorry for you and the
What a
viewers for having
joke.
to actually watch that. Crazy enough, that came out last year. No, I'm sorry, 2 years ago, October 15th, 2023. So I'm sure some people out there look at, well, October 7th just happened, blah, 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 blah. It's like, for him to talk about how if you stand against terrorism and the targeting of civilians and innocent people, he should have said, then you should stand against the state of Israel, which is targeting people. But that's actually wasn't the main part I actually wanted to get your thoughts on. When it comes to the state of Maryland, even investing in Israel, can you talk about how we actually take our tax dollars for us to actually invest in their country?
Yeah, so I think one of the prominent ways that the state invests its money in apartheid Israel is through the Maryland Israeli Development Center, MIDC, and there's a partnership program where taxpayer dollars are used to help Israeli startup companies that, and just like any, evil corporate, agenda, sometimes they use these benevolent goals like, human sciences or, like those kinds of things to cloak their, like what they're really doing, which is, yeah, like weapons manufacturing, surveillance. And so, one of these corporations, Delta in North America, is actually in Howard County. It was, it used taxpayer dollars. It was provided to it, I think in 2013 or something like that, as some sort of, like assistance to as it moved to the area. And so the MIDC is one way, and the other way, I think, and like you said, so like you showed, this continued political cover, by people like Wes Moore, maintain, provide this cover for, for us to continue our relationship with, apartheid Israel. So, that does have a material component to it, because I think, if we label Israel an apartheid state, then it would have an impact economically. It would have an impact, it would lead to people who are investing in corporations that are profiting from what's going on there to start to not do business there. So we're providing cover. And then the other thing is the Governor Hogan issued this illegal anti-BDS law, the boycott, divest, and sanction executive order. So he signed an executive order that made it illegal for companies that procure or that bid in state procurement contracts to sign like this affidavit that they are not for like BDS or whatever like that.
Wow.
So it deters them from participating in the boycott in the boycott of Israel. Governor Westmore refuses to repeal this illegal anti-BDS law. So like those are I think the two substantive ways. And I think last year Delegate Kalen Young introduced a bill to repeal the executive order, and unfortunately it didn't make it to be voted on. And then but there are many. Yeah, I think those are the two main ones that come to mind. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there are some the state is invested in Israeli bonds as well, that that I think some other people are looking at. And while we're talking about that, one of the things that at least for me, what I've realized is what's going on in Israel is going on in the Sudan. It's in Gaza, as it's going on in the Sudan, is going on in the Congo, and it's been going on for decades with our taxpayer dollars, and we in the US are profiting from human suffering and exploitation. And so we're beneficiaries of that. And we're working on a ballot issue effort in Howard County to implement an ethical investment screening framework that would require taxpayer dollars not to be invested in any entities that are profiting from weapons manufacturing, from guns, from fossil fuel, private prisons, detention centers, and predatory lending. Any entities that, so we're collecting signatures now to get this ballot issue on the ballot, next year, and have the voters to vote on it. And if we're successful and the voter votes on it, then we would amend the county charter, and then we would, the county council would pass a law that would require that the city or the county has an investment policy that would lead us to investing in life-sustaining, non-exploitative business practices. And again, like it's a recognition that this is just not about what's going on in Gaza, but it's more of generally we are beneficiaries of human suffering in the US and in the West generally. And so it's to say, yes, we don't want to benefit from that. We can do it. We can do it better.
Wow, that's awesome. And then as we wrap up here, please, can you tell the public how they can get involved with what you're doing with the ballot initiative, and also any other last words you want to leave with the public here?
Yeah. So our website is HoCo, 4 humandignity.org. So you can reach out to us through there. Our goal is to get 200 volunteers to help us collect 100 signatures each. We need to collect 20,000 signatures, and you don't have to be a Howard County resident to help collect signatures. You have to be a Howard County resident to sign the petition, but you don't have to be a resident to help collect signatures. So would like your help. Any amount of signatures will do. The only other thing is, we just have to speak up. I think people think that not speaking up will keep you safe, and I think it's not going to keep us safe. And the more we speak up, I think the more the people who want us not to speak up will see that if there are more voices, then I think it will make it clear that the people who want undocumented immigrants to be picked up, kidnapped from the streets, or for Black people to be basically lynched and killed. Yeah, there are more voices who are against that, and I think it will help in a significant way. But if you stay quiet, then they will come for you. So nobody's safe unless, I think, we all speak up.
I love that. Hiruy, thank you so much for joining me here on the podcast. Can you also tell people how they can stay in touch with you, follow what you're doing, and stuff like that, if you want to share your social media handles, stuff like that?
Yeah. So I think I don't even know my what is it? It's like my first name, last name on Instagram. So Hiruy Hadgu is how they can find me on Instagram. Awesome. And then my website is just my first name, last name, that I just maintain a little bit. And then I have my Substack also. And again, like I forget what that is. If they search for my name, like they will find the Substack as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Again,
but if they search the Howard County for Human Dignity, we'll be able to interact. Yeah. So, yeah. Awesome.
Thank you all so much for tuning in to Left Handed Leftist podcast. Can't wait to see you all next time on our next episode next Wednesday. Thanks so much.